Hello and welcome to Facebook Live. I am Kenda Ruth from The Hero Spouse, here to answer your questions about midlife crisis in your marriage. I am going live in 3 locations. I'm going live on YouTube, I'm going live on a private Facebook page, and a public Facebook page. If you're in the private group, your comments are safe, but if you're in the public group, your friends might get notifications about your comments, so they are not private. So I'm going to go into each of the Facebook groups and let you know which one you're in case you can't tell. As I go through the questions, if you hear me using a name, it's because I've been given permission. Otherwise, I will keep that person anonymous. So let's get started. I'm going to refresh my screen, make sure that I'm coming through, and post up those comments. I will also be putting a link to my free course, Understanding Midlife Crisis, in these comments so that you can check that out if you haven't already enrolled. I highly recommend that to get you some of your basic questions answered and help you just get through the whys. In addition, this next week, I've done 2 already this week, I am offering my free training. I offer it a few times a year, Overcoming Your Barriers to Detachment. It is live and free. It's a webinar, and I'm going to put that link in the comments as well. If you haven't already signed up, there's one next Monday in the evening Pacific time, and one on Wednesday at 2 o'clock, I believe it is, Pacific time. So give me a moment while I get everything refreshed. That way I can see myself coming in and make sure everything is working as I view my regular computer to see it just as you're seeing it. Okay, coming through fine in the private group. Check the public group for a moment. Okay, good. Comments going into the public group. Oops. And if you hear anything in the background, the dog apparently is barking outside. It looks like Chuck and Elijah have just gotten into the hot tub because the door, I could see through my window that they just lifted up the hot tub. So the dog is barking like crazy. Okay, there are the comments in the public group. Here's the detachment training link in the private group. And here we go. Okay, so I have about 8 or so questions. We'll see what I can get through. And if I can't get through all of them, I'm not sure this week if I will have time to do any single videos to put out, just because launch week when I'm doing my webinar is can be a very I don't want to say stressful, that's not the right word, but very busy. I was up till midnight last night, so I might have circles under my eyes, just editing my video replay for everybody. So let's get started. First, I'm going to see if we got any comments coming through. It's just mine so far. Good. So first, now I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. I will do my best. It's Martiz or Marthiz, but I'm going to say Martiz. We have a Martiz, female left behind spouse. Bomb drop was May of 2012. Yes, you're hearing that correctly. Date of marriage is 1990. Context type is a clinging boomerang and a low energy wallower. Do standing spouses go through a midlife crisis as well? I've been standing for my marriage for these last 9.5 years, and now I'm feeling extreme anger at God, at myself, and all those who hurt me. I thought I'd resolved those feelings. I've forgiven my husband. That's not the problem. Okay, I do have a few questions, but let's just go over. Do standing spouses have an MLC? Well, we can go through a midlife transition. You can have 2 spouses that are in a midlife crisis. You could end up going through your crisis through a crisis. One person's crisis has triggered another, so that's possible. I'm not sensing that at this point. I'm sensing normalcy. And the other thing I want you to think about is you've been in this for 9.5 years. We consider life cycles and life transitions every 7 years. That's what some of the social scientists have discovered, that we go through a transition. And that doesn't mean you necessarily feel it and you feel big changes. But you've been in this beyond the 7-year time. And so you might just be cycling back and transitioning through some feelings again. Your feelings are normal. Because you're feeling anger, even at God, doesn't mean that it's a crisis in the sense of midlife crisis. It might feel emotionally crisis-like for you, but it doesn't mean that this is something destructive, is what I mean. When I say crisis, I consider midlife crisis to be something destructive. Midlife transition is not. But you might still have some of the same feelings in a transition, or another kind of transition that may not be the midlife transition. You've been going through this and you're going to cycle through feelings of anger. The problem with anger isn't anger. It's if you let that emotion control you and get out of control. If you let your anger be your sword and not your shield. That's when anger is dangerous. When anger turns to rage. But it's okay to have anger. It's okay to have doubt. And when I say doubt, I mean you could be about your marriage. But as a religious person, I'm saying it's okay to have religious doubts. That's what brings us to questioning God. So all of these things, some of them you bring these things to God. The why me is not an inappropriate question to God unless you're just doing it as a complaint and you're not really interested in the answer. You're just feeling sorry for yourself. But if you're saying, why me? Why is this happening? I want to understand. Or I'm just so lost and confused. Having doubt brings you to the next level. Being anger isn't bad, but I want you to sit in it. And I want you to understand it. And I want you to be in control of it. Yeah, you're going to resolve those feelings and they're going to come back. I've said that Chuck and I have gotten pretty much through the point where he came home, we reconciled, but there was maybe a few years where it was, an argument brought up, well, you did this to me, or, hey, I'm not the one who, and then bringing up the affair, maybe in just a single comment. Those are behind us, for the most part. And I mean it for the most part. They're really behind us. I don't think about it, even though I do this daily. So I have it in my head and I know the history and I'm not forgetting it ever because I don't want to relive it. And I understand at the same time that we're not immune because nobody's immune. This teaches you that. But at the same time, I do cycle through these, and especially given the not triggers, but the memories that I get working with all of you, there could be times I'd said something in the last few years and cycle and feel it. Not typically, but it doesn't mean I'm perfect about it. I still go through, I went through this piece and he went through this piece and being mad that it had to happen to me. Yeah. I just don't live in it. And it's rare for me, but we can go through those. And especially when, look at all the things that are going on in all of our lives right now. This is not a great time, but we can use this global pandemic because every single one of us on the earth is being affected in some way by this global pandemic. It has been a crisis of global proportions that affects everyone. And we've all been experiencing these traumas and new conditions and fears. And when things get to the point where we're experiencing these fears, maybe living in these fears, maybe experiencing trauma, and we're not handling them well, maybe it's just too much, raining cats and dogs, we can't resort to our negative coping mechanisms. Those are the times when we are more vulnerable to feeling. So you're not only going through this crisis, you've been standing a very long time. But there's other things that are coming at you at the same time now. You're already going through this, and now, it just piles on more. So what you're feeling is normal. It doesn't mean that you are or aren't having a midlife crisis yourself, or a midlife transition, or just questioning and doubting. Remember, that helps you move forward, though, those questionings. It might be scary because you're afraid, well, if I doubt, if you're religious, and rather than MLC thinking, if I doubt God, or I doubt this about God, that means I don't believe. That means I'm not a good Christian, or I'm not a good Jew, or I'm not a good Muslim, or whichever your faith is. It's not what it means. That is how we become stronger. Take the risk of asking those questions of yourself. Why am I doing this? It's not that doubter on the street who thinks nobody should stand saying, why are you doing that? That's not what it is. I get not wanting them that question, because the tone was made it a different question, didn't it? But understanding why you're doing something. You've listed out the pros, you've listed out the cons. Here they are. Here's why I'm doing it. Understanding. That's okay. And it's okay to question it. It's okay to change your mind. It's okay not to. Just do it for you. Now, I don't know if that was helpful regarding your anger, because I know you've been posting about feeling terrible with this anger boiling up in you. And I really want you to bank on feeling that it's not a bad thing, supposing that you are able to control it. And if you are not able to control it, consider seeking out some professional help or some meditative help, doing some mindfulness, and some hypnotherapy is always my thing. I know people aren't always into it, but some meditative practices can help bring some calm and peace to it. Okay, I'm going to move on to number 2 and check. No comments yet. Okay, we have Julie. Julie's bomb drop was May of 2018. Her marriage was 1997. She has a boomerang and a low energy wallower. For 12 months, my MLCer has been out of the house. For 12 months, my MLCer has been out of the house. For 2.5 years, he's been asking to come home. Was he starting to try and reconcile before that, or am I missing some of the way this is worded? Not sure. Okay. He's still very detached. He gets very critical. Then he goes distant until he shows up again, acting like nothing ever happened. He's willing to go to counseling with our daughter or with me, but not individual counseling. Unfortunately, none of the counselors will see he and my daughter together unless he goes to a couple of individual sessions first. And he's not making any move in that direction. Okay. He recently sent me a text saying that he made a vow to himself that 2022 is the year that he decided to put forth some energy and effort into putting his family and marriage back together, or, this is a key piece here, or he's going to just divorce. In other words, he's just going to forget it. Okay. He says he's tired of being in limbo, a limbo he's put himself in, although he blames me. He says he has a tremendous amount of things to work out, but he won't talk about what they are. And he might not know. He might just have the understanding that there are a tremendous amount of things. One minute he acts like he wants a divorce, and the next minute he tells me that I should remember I'm married. Okay, so you have somebody who really does want this to work out, whether it's duty bound or not. If it doesn't work out, he's trying to build himself an excuse of the I tried checkbox. And not due to counseling, but 2022 is my year, and if it just doesn't work, well, I have to figure out it's not going to work. Now, I want you to, he's not going to understand. You don't understand. He's in a midlife crisis. So if he's not ready, he will think it's not working. And then he's got that checkbox, but he may not be ready. Now, the other thing is he's showing signs of being ready, though, or being ready, to be guided, to be helped. I am really wondering about this. You've said you've talked to a few counselors, and none of them have said they will see him unless he goes to individual counseling first. I'm curious as to why. Because I'm sure there are some that would say that, but that seems, I haven't heard that that you can't find a counselor who won't see him as a couples therapy. Couples therapists often say, no, will you come together? I do say it's great to go on your own sometimes And sometimes I liked going on my own, just to ask the questions, to interview the therapist, to find out if we would work together well. And the one that I really liked and wasn't ready for it. We weren't ready at that point, but I interviewed him and we went for a little while. At the end of that, he said, you know what, don't do that. I don't know if I agree with him, but he said that thing where, because he talked to me and he talked to Chuck and then he talked to me again. And I think Chuck told him he was still having the affair. And that brought in collusion. And he had that, I don't discuss the private issues with your spouse that we've talked about. Whereas I would like an agreement from a counselor, if you're going to couples therapy, is this collusion thing's off the table. There are certain things, but I've already said an affair isn't. And if you say that you will keep an affair secret, if he tells you, you need to tell me right now that you will keep that secret, because we won't come to you. Not all therapists will agree to collusion. So there's reasons for and not, and it does break that therapist's legal requirement that they don't have of privacy. But between couples, there can be an agreement that a therapist says, no, I won't keep that one. So I am curious as to why they want to see him individually. That might be good, but I also am worried, even more so in the beginning rather than where he's at now. But I am not always a fan of individual therapy. There's a post right now on the forum where someone was asking, well, if they're in a midlife crisis, can they just go to a therapist and get validated for their view and for their state of life? And then they go out thinking, yes, this is the right thing. And therapists look at happiness. Well, we just want you to be happy. I'm going to lead my people to be happy. Yeah, that's why individual counseling can be very dangerous in a midlife crisis. Here's what we want. We want a therapist who recognizes not you, but the marriage as the client. They are there to help you work on the marriage with the idea of we are working toward finding a resolution, successful toward reconciliation. Now, that doesn't mean we'll always succeed, but that is our end goal. Whereas often therapists have taken the end goal of, I'm just here to help you out and, give you, make sure that you're going to be happy. No, we are trying to find a way to get us happy, choose joy in the context of our marriage. How do we fix it? How do we resolve these issues? We want to be solution oriented and fix it going forward together. So they need to consider the marriage as the client. I would actually look for more therapists. It's not that it's bad that they won't see him and that they want him to come in a few times. But if that's an absolute wall that he won't cross, and who knows, maybe that's an excuse that he won't cross because he has a reason for not going to couples therapy. Because they put up oh, well, I can't do that one. But you'll find that out. I would find a therapist who will just start seeing the two of you. You said that he'll go with your daughter or with you. Go with you. Okay. Now he can go to therapy with your daughter to work on their things together. But couples therapy, I want the two of you in this. And I want you to approach it as this is a repair session. And I believe in you. We're not trying to force this on a timeline of you have to be home in this time. We're going to be gentle together. We're going to be gentle with you. There's holding the feet to the fire, sure. But we don't want to scare him. Think of them as a cornered animal. Scare him too much and they just lash out. It can make things worse. So be gentle. But he's asking him to come home. And yet he's very detached. He's not ready. He's ready to be ready. And some of that, it's going to just get better and better is the idea. With the addition that some reassurances that, you know what, if you're not ready, it's not going to feel like it. You can put yourself as this goal, and I like the goal that you've said, that he said, I'm telling you as you're speaking to him, that you're going to put forth the energy into putting your family and marriage back together. I like that. That's a great goal. Put forth the energy. But the problem with it is, but if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And then I'm going to file for divorce. Put forth the energy. There is no try. What he was saying is, I'll try. There is just do. And if we don't make it by the end of this year, maybe we are on the path to it. You need to understand. I want you to reassure you that there's going to be times during this. And I'm telling him, reassuring him, it's not instant gratification. You're going to feel like it's failing sometimes. And that's okay, because it's one step backwards sometimes. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Then maybe you take some more steps back before you take some more forward again. There's going to be things where you feel like, oh God, this isn't working. But you just keep going. He's not fully ready. And remember, they don't understand that. So if this doesn't work now, it obviously is hopeless. That was how Chuck was. He wanted to take me for a test drive, and I told him I'm not a car. We're not going to just go out and have sex with me because you want to see if you get the feelings. And this was actually in the beginning for him when he did that. He said he wanted to, we should just try it. Like, no, you've been with another woman. You just got home maybe a week ago at this point or something. And you want to try to have sex with me? First thing, ew, she's still that close to it. And he was still with her. I don't know if he was with her those few weeks, but still cycling through an affair. And he hadn't gone through all of a withdrawal from an affair. And of course, this was the beginning, so he really wasn't over it, even if sometimes when he came home, he tried to be over it. So he might have been in a few weeks where he wasn't with her. But no, you're not here so that you can just test me out. You have to grow through these things. You have to heal through them. And he wanted it just to work. Well, if sex doesn't work, and not if it physically worked, but if he doesn't have the feelings during it, that one time, then it means it won't. Then we're done. Obviously, we weren't done, and I told him that we weren't going to do it because I wasn't going to be used like that. But I do want you to have the understanding and him to have the understanding that it's just not all smooth sailing. And I think he wants that. He's detached, but he doesn't understand some of the difficulties and the obstacles that are going to come with this reconciliation journey. Okay, let's move forward. I think we're going pretty slowly today. So number 3, we have an anonymous female ML seer. Her bomb drop was June of 2020 and marriage was 1998. She has a high energy replayer and he lives at home still. She says she lists several bomb drops. So first I'm going to point out there's one bomb drop. And if you really think of these as other bomb drops, then it's a lack of understanding or recognition of this as being an ongoing crisis. But let's list. She rightfully listed the original bomb drop as 6/20/20. Then she found one in the 1 year later, 6/21, June of 2021. And then number 3, November of 2021. Sometimes it's just that he said the same thing in those times it says. But if he's in a midlife crisis, that's part of it. Feels the same, depressed, wants to look for places. My changes have made this difficult. Still says I love you. He's kind and generous, says we're best friends, no alienator, says he wants to be alone, yet he does so much for the family. Our youngest went to college in September of 2021, so just started freshman year this year. He works out multiple times a day for mental relief. He's increased his drinking since bomb drop number 1. That's typical. He's generous with money, but he has a wall with physical intimacy. He says he's physically attracted, but he doesn't have romantic feelings. So he's actually putting it on him. He says, I'm physically attractive, but maybe he doesn't have the mental. Something in his body's also not working. Do we have low T? Do we have ED issues? Don't know. But we're all at that age where there are other things going on. Menopause. Okay. He'll attend social functions, wears his ring, and just recently began sleeping in another room. He's much nicer than he was summer of 2020. Well, that makes sense. That was right after bomb drop. He's only monstering, very infrequent to the dogs. Only monstering infrequent to the dogs. Okay. He's mirrored much of my gratitude and grace. Excellent. Says he felt this way long before bomb drop, the first bomb drop, which is typical. Whether they felt that way or not, that's how they feel they were feeling when they look back, because during this, it's the negative memories and feelings that surface. And if we don't feel that way positive, we can't imagine having felt positive. So negative feelings make sense to them that, well, yeah, I must have felt this way. Otherwise, I wouldn't feel this way. I used to be quite controlling and negative. I was making changes before the first bomb drop, but intensified the changes since, and I've stayed consistent. Excellent. So what stage is he in? How will he come out? His parents separated and divorced when he was a teenager. His mother was an alcoholic, and his father was depressed. He's depressed. Okay, first thing, of course, we could say that about everybody, because midlife crisis is depression. But I want you to know that he's depressed. And I don't know if he's a high energy or low energy. He said high energy. He's showing some of those, but he's still at home as well. And at home MLCers without an alienator feel more low energy. And he's just recently started sleeping in another room. I'm seeing a lot more overt rather than covert depression, especially the physically attracted but no romantic feelings. So notice one of those is physical, one of those is mental, emotional feelings, romantic feelings, but I have the physical attraction. So there is a lot going on with that. He attends social functions, he wears his ring, but he began sleeping in the other room. His stage, it is much more difficult to tell with somebody who is lower energy. And I know you said high energy because he does the drinking, he works out, but none of those things actually mean high energy. He seems a little lower. He seems more overtly depressed. And with that, and not all the way. Since this is all the information I have, there could be more high energy in there too. But with that, it's harder to tell the stage when you have more overt depression. He has been in it for enough years that he could be getting ready for coming out of the escape and avoid phase or not. He may still very well be in escape and avoid after what are we in, a year and a half? And a year and a half, that is the point where they might start being ready to exit, escape, and avoid, or not. And what I mean by that is that doesn't mean a person at 18 months is ready. Many are not ready. I look at 18 months to 2 years, and so this is the early period of it. 18 months to 2 years as when the early people, it doesn't mean they're early on all of their MLC, but when some of them will start to come out. I don't see them come out of escape and avoid before that. So the odds are that stages sit the same. Stage hasn't changed. It's escape and avoid. When I say hasn't changed, of course, it's progressed through this long period of escape and avoid. But most likely he's still there, but perhaps becoming more and more close to the end and getting ready to go toward liminality. But with an overt depressive, it's a lot harder to see that. It's a lot harder to live with it. It's a lot harder to live with sometimes the seething anger underneath. But I lived with taunting and teasing and flaunting of an alienator. Plus, mine kept coming and going, moving in and moving out. He's done very much well at being at the good things with your gratitude and grace. I just want you to keep him up. I want you to educate yourself on depressives and what it is to be the caregiver or the partner of somebody who is depressed. And one of depression's dirty little secrets is infidelity. And you don't have an alienator now, but they don't tell us that about depression. And what it is there's probably infidelity and the denial of the depression, because then they can blame their everything on, well, I cheated, and so of course I feel bad, or, well, we have a horrible marriage, so I cheated, or I'm not cheating at all. Of course we go through that, but I have a bad marriage, and I'm not depressed, I'm angry, and I'm angry because she's a horrible spouse. There's all sorts of things, and so infidelity is a way to avoid the depression and put the blame somewhere else as well, in order to avoid the depression. If it's depression, then the problem is theirs, isn't it? It's not you, it's them. And let's face it, it's not you, it's them. Okay, I am going to move forward, see if we're getting anything. Okay, hold on, I'm going to go back and answer the questions. How do you get them out of your head? We did everything together, and everything I do and places I go, I'm thinking of him. He's been gone for 15 months, and thoughts of him just aren't fading, even when I go off to work. Even there, I think of him when he used to call, and when I leave, I knew he would always be home. So you're getting stuck in the thought cycling, and it sounds to me like there's still the why. You do things to redirect your thoughts. And for me, redirecting my thoughts was what I did with, it's the mindfulness practices. And I went and saw a hypnotherapist. I did a lot of meditating, but it was hypnotherapy, where I had another guide, and he created it for me. So I wasn't simply looking, did they have YouTube in 2005? If they did, I didn't know about it. And there's great stuff out there that's free. But when I had it guided for me, it was made sure I said, here's what I want, here's what I need, and then my name was used in it. So it was created very specifically for me. So that was tailored. And I saw the hypnotherapist only a few times. But I do recommend things like that. Things that you can do to redirect your thoughts. Because sure, I did that too. I thought about him all the time. Now, it was a little different because he kept coming home and was giving and showing a lot of hope. How do you do that when it's not that way as well? But it takes practice. And 15 months, unfortunately, isn't a long time. But really, find some different things that when you're doing them, you're in a flow. For some people, that's driving. I one time drove from Tacoma all the way to Mount Vernon, where I'm from, to visit my mom. And I got into town, I got off the road, and I drove right into the church parking lot. I started the turn into park, and then I thought, it was 100 miles. I'd been on the road for 2.5 hours. I didn't get out of the car. I thought, what am I doing? I just drove into the church parking lot. Grandma used to joke that my car drives straight to the church. And the church was on the way. I had to drive past it, or maybe a block away from being past it, to get to my mom's house. It wasn't like I went on a different road, but seriously, I was in such a hypnotic state as I got off, I just went to the church. So we do that while driving. We can get in those states, but a state of flow, or finding the runner's high. Sometimes you're in a state of flow just doing dishes, or doing things like going for a walk. But I really like the ideas where we can do things with meditation and hypnotherapy, where we're specifically redirecting our thoughts. And the thing is, we don't redirect our thoughts by, don't think of the color blue, because everything you have to do now brings up the color blue. So when you're telling yourself, I don't want to think about this, you don't identify what it is you want to stop thinking about, because you have to think about it to identify it. And that's something hypnotherapists know how to do, know how to make sure that you stop thinking of the color blue by redirecting your thoughts from it, rather than talking about how you're not going to think about this anymore, because then you'll just constantly keep thinking about it. There's also neuro-linguistic programming, which might also be helpful. A lot of hypnotherapists have training in both because they package them together. And think of it as NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and that will have some ideas for redirecting your thoughts as well, because it's thought stopping and redirecting them. What do you need to do? All sorts of things, affirmations, creative visualization. But my personal favorite would be hypnotherapy. If you can package it with NLP, totally awesome. Okay, let's see, where was I? Number 4, we have Peppermint Patty. And Peppermint Patty's bomb drop was 2019 in March, and a date of marriage of 2009. But she said, we've actually been together since 1996, which is helpful. So thank you. Because usually meaning been together is usually meaning in a marital context, such as cohabiting. You're welcome, Patty. I hope that helps. And let's see. That's what we got here. Low energy wallower and still lives at home. Just wondering what stage he's in. After bomb drop, he cut off all contact with the alienator, and he seems to just want to sweep it under the rug. Oh, yes, of course. He said he wants us. He said he's trying to make things better, but he won't discuss any of it with me. He said our life was stale, and seems to me it still is, 2.5 years after bomb drop. Yeah, actually, we're almost 3 years. I was unaware of midlife crisis until 6 months ago. Before that, I lit into him whenever I felt upset, more like insecure, low self-esteem. We moved to the town the affairs occurred in, and while I know he hasn't had contact since bomb drop, he neglects to take me out. There might be a fear if you're in a small enough town just of running into that and bringing that situation to as well. Only to the steakhouse that I know of, none of his friends were frequent. Oh, so I'm assuming you go out. That's the only place you do go out. That because none of his friends frequent that. Okay. He refuses to take me dancing, making the excuses that he has to lose 40 pounds first. I understand that one. The self-consciousness, but it could be an excuse as well. Or it could be both. I just want to have some fun with him like we used to. Now I'm just stuck in the house. No friends and no family. By the way, we've been together since 1996. So, well, yeah, it could be a midlife crisis with a low energy wallower. You're right. The thing that is unique or unusual, and not as unusual with a low energy wallower, is after bomb drop, and I'm assuming that means kind of at bomb drop, not like 3 years out. Well, 10 months after bomb drop, but after bomb drop, in other words, close to bomb drop, he cut off contact with the alienators, and he seems so. He ended the affair. Bomb drop might have been what instigated that. And that's a little bit less common, though not as much when it is a low energy wallower, because oftentimes low energy wallowers have failed affairs. So they might not fail in getting an affair, but it doesn't take. It doesn't really, the limerence doesn't work. It doesn't become emotionally blinded. They don't have the feelings for that person, and it might just send them greater into their depression. The low energy wallower tries to be a high energy replayer because that's a lot more fun, and they fail. So in the beginning, it might even appear that person is a replayer, high energy person. And if you're only 3 months in, you're thinking, oh yeah, mine's this way. It's because they're testing it out. And that's why I say we really want to have a longer period of time before we say, yes, this person is a low energy wallower or a high energy replayer, and they are an at-homer or a clinging boomerang, that kind of thing. We look at the time until they've settled into their MLC a little bit more. Now yours, this is settled in. I mean, this is a few years. You have a depressed spouse. You know that. The low energy wallower. He doesn't want to go out. He's feeling self-conscious. He's ashamed and guilty. Here's what you do. You go to counseling without him. You find a counselor. Find someone who will say, and you say, my husband and I really need couples counseling. He refuses to come. And so I am coming as an example, and because I'm going to get help from it. And I've invited him, and I want that counselor find someone who is open to your husband finally, maybe every time he's invited. You know what? Here, I'm going off to counseling. You're welcome to join me. I want him to see the example. I want him, in other words, this is part of being the lighthouse or the mirror. See the example, not just the growth you get from it, but that you're doing this and you're doing it to work on it. It's an example that he might not follow. He might follow it. Because there's a point, and now could still be that point where it's still pressure. Counseling, I love making it a requirement and all of those things, and I told Chuck it was. But when he was home the first time for a full year, remember he came home last time, but this is a full year. Oh, I said counseling. I told him there was absolute. Now, but he'd taken that affair underground, and that was the counselor that colluded. And so we weren't ready for it, but he did agree to go. But after that, since it didn't work and everything, you know what? I just stopped. I said, okay, I'm not going to push for counseling right now. It's just not time. And he did it for me. And he lied to him and all that stuff. But he did it for me. It wasn't going to work. You want to go anyway. And do it for you. this counselor, it works for your therapy, works as a coach for you, helps you understand things, and works any of your issues out. And what I told Chuck when he was ready to go, he went on his own first, and we weren't. It was when I was staying with my grandma, because I said we can't, no house hopping. So I moved in with grandma because she needed help. And that meant we didn't have to pay for a separate apartment for him. And I came home every other weekend, and then I stayed longer and longer throughout the time as we prepared. And finally, and I said, go see your counselor, and it needs to be somebody who's a couples counselor so that we'll transition to going together. And then one day I just went and showed up with him. And I remember her saying, oh, you brought your wife this time. She didn't complain. It wasn't expected. We didn't call ahead and say, can she, or any of that. I actually said, okay, this is time. I'm home this weekend. You're already going. So it was probably like a Thursday, since I was staying a little bit longer each weekend into the week. And yeah. And from then on, I don't think he had any individual sessions, because it was probably every other week that he saw her. We went together. And you need to find somebody who is open to seeing you alone, because he won't come. And so that he is open to you alone, and then that one day he might just be there. And kindly let him know, not remind him, I'm going, will you come with me? I'm going, you're welcome to come with me, but it's okay. And at the same time, letting him know that there's going to be a point in time where it's going to be, you're going to need to come, but we're not there yet. It's okay. I want you to feel safe. Try that. But that way you'll at least help you as well, because he's depressed. He's not going to do those things you want him to do. He's not going to do the dancing. And then also bring him some solutions. Well, you don't feel like going dancing, so you say, because you want to lose 40 pounds. Well, what do you think we can do about that? Could we do things together that can help get us physically fit? Now, be careful. My husband, we've both gone through periods of not being physically fit, but his degree was phys ed. So he thinks he's the expert, which he is on that. But then he uses it as a way of controlling me. So I often don't want to do those things with him, because he tells me how I'm supposed to do it and how I'm doing things wrong. And this is more in nutrition or diet than even the exercise. And so be careful that he doesn't feel pressured if, say, you're more fit than he is, and let's say you're a marathoner, and that you know what you're doing. He might not want you to be his coach. So be careful with that as well. Sometimes that would be why I would avoid, if I were doing things with Chuck, in the back, right before bomb drop, maybe for 6 months, I secretly started running. I didn't want Chuck to know about it. I secretly started running so that I could then present my running to him. And I did. I think I did it before bomb drop. So this was something we'd started before bomb drop, but I wanted to surprise him. I didn't want him to go with me through the phases of I'm going to walk between telephone poles, one telephone pole walk, one telephone pole. I didn't want him telling me, you're doing that wrong. You could do more. I didn't want that. It was going to make me resentful. I wanted him to be there as a partner, but not as a coach, not as somebody who could critique it. And so then we went together, and it worked out. So I want you to be careful about some things. If you're just perfectly thin and you have the right nutrition and all this, and maybe he has a certain diet he wants to do and you don't approve of that diet, too bad. Just support him in how he chooses those things. But see if you can find some solutions. And you might find out that, well, it's not the 40 pounds. Maybe he wants to lose it as well, but that's an excuse. Or he loses the 40 pounds and then there's another excuse. It's really not the reason he's not going dancing. Or it is. Okay. We have 15 minutes left and we've only done half of them. So we will not quite get through all of these. Okay. Gerald, I am going to do my best to answer yours. I don't think I've read through the entire post about monstering as silence as monstering, but I do recall reading through some of it a few days ago. So we have Gerald. He is a male MLCer. Now, Gerald, I don't know if you're also a left behind spouse because I only left that as an option in my form. And not familiar with contact level or energy level at this point. He says, I would love to hear your thoughts on silence as monstering. I asked a question about it in the private Facebook group where there's a little more information. And many have suggested that it is monstering in a conflict avoidant sort of way. Sure, yeah, it can be. It's a form of monstering or a form of control, a form of deflecting, avoiding, all of those things. Also, I have the unfortunate, probably, knowledge that I am going through MLC myself and I hate it all. And when you said that, I think I've read your thing, but I don't, just not being able to recall of it, I don't know if you mean my wife and I are both, or if, and you're saying I'm also going through it. How do I identify and confront my demons so that I can get out of this with my family still intact? Limerence is such a controlling taskmaster, and I fear it's only a matter of time before I physically act on it, not just emotionally. Therapy. Now, if you're going to go through therapy, remember what I said about finding a marriage-friendly therapist. So you could do that with your spouse. You could go through therapy without your spouse. But I would really like it if you had somebody who was not helping you just... Hold on, Chuck's yelling something. Oh! Okay. I am going to have to go because the dog just ran away. And I will finish all of these next time. And Gerald, I will work on something for you specifically. Okay? Sorry to rush off everybody, but I got to go help find the dog because she just ran out. Okay? So we're going to end quickly.